My name's Leisa Reichelt. I work for the Government Digital Service, which is part of the Cabinet Office in Her Majesty's government in the United Kingdom, which is a little bit strange to me because I'm actually from Australia, so I know a lot more about the Australian political system than I do about the British political system, although I've been learning very quickly, which has been entertaining. So hello. Do many of you know very much about the Government Digital Service and the story of GovUK? A little bit? I'll give you a little bit of background, but feel free to give me like the go faster if you feel like you've all heard of this before. The basic story behind it all starts with this guy down here. This is Francis Maude. He's the Minister for the Cabinet Office, and he very sensibly at some point thought to himself that perhaps the government could do better with the way that it does digital and technology than what it had been doing in the past. I think most governments have got a track record of IT train crashes, and the UK government certainly has had its fair share. And also it costs us an absolute fortune, way more than it kind of felt like it should. So he asked this lady, Martha Lane Fox, Dame Martha Lane Fox she now is, who was a .com entrepreneur from like before the first crash. She and a couple of partners started lastminute.com, which you might have heard of. It's like a hotel booking service that actually still exists now. She got out of that many years ago now, and is now, does lots of different things, but is particularly interested in trying to help people who don't have access to online services to get online and get access to all of the benefits that brings. Martha wrote a report that was, I think, about 6 pages long, like incredibly short by way of like government reports, and called for revolution and not evolution, which was probably the best thing that she could have done. Who wants to take bets on whether I fall over that thing this afternoon? I think there's a fair chance. Which basically meant, there's no way that we can iterate our way out of where we are now. We really need to turn it all upside down and start again. And she said there's 4 main things that we needed to do. First of all, we needed to create GDS, the Government Digital Service. And that was about looking at the fact that we'd outsourced all of our knowledge about technology. We didn't really have people in government anymore who knew anything about contemporary technology, who knew how to procure it, like what kind of companies to talk to, and what good looks like, and to tell if people were talking absolute barking rubbish at you. We didn't have those kind of people in-house anymore, let alone people who could actually make good things in digital. So we brought a whole bunch of people in who actually knew what good contemporary technology looked like. Then the first thing after that was to fix publishing, which is GovUK, which you might have seen or heard of a little bit. The next thing is to fix transactions, and that's what we're really very focused on at the moment. So working with departments to try and fix some of the most important transactions that government has with its citizens. And then the fourth one is to go wholesale. So that's basically to find very shareable ways to let anybody who wants to join in this process of helping to make government a better experience for citizens to be able to do that. So most obviously through things like APIs, but also open sourcing our code, sharing our knowledge, sharing how we do things, just making everything as open as we possibly can. And our goal is to make services that are so good that people prefer to use them over the alternatives. You don't get much choice over who you pay your tax to, but you do get a choice as to whether or not you call up the call centre, or you fill in a form, or you go to an accountant, or you use a digital service that's provided by the government. For us, we think that getting people to use digital has got 2 really big advantages. The first is that it can offer people a much more convenient, easy to use way to interact with government. And the second one is that it saves government a lot of money. A transaction done on the internet is an awful lot less expensive than one that's done, in person or on the phone. So that's good for all of us as taxpayers. Most people think that all that GDS does is GovUK, but there's actually 5 big pieces of work that we're looking at the moment. The first of them is GovUK. I'll show you a little video that just sort of gives you a picture of what that has involved.
Hi, I'm Adi Adiwami. I work at the Government Digital Service, and I'm here to tell you about GovUK. We launched gov.uk in October 2012. It replaced the 2 big central government websites, DirectGov and BusinessLink. The idea was to make something simpler, clearer and faster, something focused on users. Firstly, we took a careful look and worked out what services and information we actually needed to deliver. We thought, for instance, that we could probably stop spending taxpayers' money telling people how to haggle when abroad, or how to identify different kinds of waves. We eliminated thousands of pages that no one ever visited. Then we made sure that the information we were providing was as easy to find and to follow as possible. This, for example, is the page on DirectGov that tells you about bank holidays. Now, it has all the information you need, and you'd think it'd be hard to do it better. But looking at how people actually use the site, we realised that what most people were searching for was the date of the next bank holiday. So we put that right to the top of the page, big and bold. We've done the same thing to more complex tasks, like working out how much maternity pay you're entitled to. Before, on DirectGov, you'd need to read all this information. On gov.uk, you just need to answer a few simple questions, and the site calculates the answer for you. In April 2013, we finished moving all departmental sites to gov.uk, together with the sites for Number 10 and the Deputy Prime Minister's office. So instead of every government page having a different design and different navigation, every site now looks and works the same way. At the same time, we've rethought how policy is presented online. Before gov.uk, if you wanted to understand government policy on something like gangs, for instance, you'd have needed to visit all these separate pages. Now, there's a single page for each policy, and all the departments involved share the responsibility for keeping it up to date. You can even subscribe to those policy pages so that you're always kept informed of any changes. And if you're responsible for a particular policy, you can find out how often it's being looked at and how closely it's being read. Today, gov.uk is handling more web traffic than the sites it replaced at a far lower cost, and users get to the information they need quicker than they did before. Gov.uk is not perfect, and it's not finished. It's never going to be. It's designed to improve, to react to user needs. We've made thousands of changes to gov.uk, and we make small improvements almost every day. This idea, iterative, responsive change, is at the heart of everything we do. You should visit us at www.gov.uk. Hopefully, you'll see something you like. Something simpler, clearer, and faster.
So that's gov.uk. That was obviously a huge piece of work. It continues to be a huge piece of work. We have all the departments in there now. There are 300 arm's length bodies, which are like the groups that hang off the departments. They're on their way in now as well. So hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have all of the arm's length bodies in there as well. HMRC, our tax department, is one of the arm's length bodies. So that's still like a huge, huge piece of work. So lots and lots of stuff going on there. It's the government website. It's not GDS's website. People all through government update content on gov.uk every day. So looking after our publishing tools is a big piece of work for us as well. Another huge project, and this is my kind of home project where I do the research work that I do, is on identity. If you are going to do things online with the government, if you're going to be able to do things like renewing your passport or getting your driver's license or pay your taxes, we need to be pretty sure that it's definitely you at the other end of the computer doing the things. And unlike a lot of other kind of European countries, we don't have identity cards or kind of a single database of identity. In fact, the UK is kind of very sensitive about that as an issue at all, so it's just not an option. So we have to come up with a completely different way of doing that without having one big database, which is a lot of fun. That's my happy face on. So it's a federated identity service. It means that it uses a range of different commercial suppliers, and that citizens can choose which one of those commercial partners they want to use to prove that they are who they say that they are, in order to then log on and access government services. And it's a system that we'll be able to use throughout government, but also potentially in commercial systems as well, which is where I think it will have its real payoff. But it's the first time that something like this has been done really kind of anywhere, and certainly in government. So it's very hard work, but pretty exciting. We also have the Office of the Chief Technology Officer as part of GDS. So interestingly, we're mostly, in most places you go to, digital reports to technology. In the UK government, technology reports to digital, which is kind of as it should be. And I love these people in the OCTO, they call themselves, Officers of the Chief Technology Officer. because they have spend control, which means that if you're going to spend over a certain amount of money on technology and government, you have to go to these guys for them to say, yes, it's okay. So their job basically is to try to make sure that no more stupid decisions get made about technology at scale in government ever again. Bless their socks. And that's a great opportunity for them then to kind of route back to those of us in GDS to have conversations with people who may not kind of have quite worked out good ways to approach technology. It gives us an opportunity to have a conversation with them and to help them understand how things have changed over the last kind of decade or so and what good looks like these days. So they're doing a lot of work just basically trying to make sure that we do things like don't have a completely different hosting solution for every single different digital thing that we do. So, you know, some ridiculous amount, like 0.01% of GDP is currently spent on hosting, which is a ridiculous amount of money. And part of what they're doing is starting to optimize that and make sure that we're spending the right amount in the right way. We also do lots of measuring. Measuring is very important, and there's a whole group who work on making these dashboards for every single service. So all of the services, you can go, these are designed for service managers, so people who are in charge of deciding what gets done to make services better for people, but these are also completely public as well, and you can see things like what the completion rates are and what the user satisfaction rates are and where in a journey is everybody actually dropping out, you know, who's getting all the way through, and digital take-up, so how many people are doing it digitally versus doing it on the telephone. All of that stuff is being captured and made completely public, which is kind of good.
It's public?
So it's public, yeah. gov.uk/performance, I think, is the URL. Yeah. Choose your favorite government transaction, see how it's going. And then another incredibly important one is the transformation. So I mentioned before about fixing transactions. This is where we work with departments to fix transactions. So we're working on 25 of the most important transactions in government. We've picked the ones that are really high volume and really quite difficult and really important, and we're working with departments to try to fix them. So one of the biggest, most interesting ones, I think, is electoral registration. So I don't know how it works where you're from, but in the UK, up until basically now, a letter comes through the post and says, dear householder, to the head of the household, please write down who in your house is eligible to vote, and then send it back to us. Which, first of all, paper, but second of all, what households actually have a head of a household anymore? That's a very outmoded concept. So we've moved now to individual electoral registration, where as an individual person you need to register to vote, which is a big move. But what you can do now in about 5 minutes, less than that, maybe probably a minute on your mobile phone, you can just sign up and register to vote, and it's simple as pie, and pretty much almost anybody could do it. We do loads of research with people all the way through the digital literacy scale, and very, very, very low down that scale, people can hop on their phone and register to vote, which I think is very, very cool. So we are trying to become more and more a user-centered government, a government that understands what the users of its services need and does a really good job of trying to meet those needs. And so we talk about user needs all the time, and I think I've heard this mentioned in a few different sessions so far, which always makes me smile. We talk about this in GDS all the time. You can walk through our office, and if you're there for half an hour, chances are you will hear a few people say the words user need, and they won't all be content people, and they won't be user researchers, and they won't only be designers. They could be people in procurement, or they could be people in accounts, or they could be people all through the business. It's just a thing that we do, and we have these design principles that start at the top start with needs, and they're called design principles, but they're not just for designers who do designing. They get applied to absolutely everything. If we're asking ourselves whether or not this is a project that we should do, we run through these principles and go, does it meet these principles? So almost everything that everybody does is guided by these design principles. And the very first one is about starting with needs, and we always need to just keep saying users' needs, not government needs. You know your needs, you're fine, you will look after yourself. Let's make sure we understand the users. Because typically what we do at the beginning of projects is we just write a big long list of requirements. And even though we talk about user need, it can be really easy just to think that what that means is that you write your list of requirements, but instead of going, I must have a button that does this, you go, as a user, I want a button that does this, which is, kind of like just requirements in disguise. So we want to always make sure that we're challenging and saying, is it actually a user need? It's not a government need. Hopefully, ideally, it's both. The best ones are where the user need and the government need intersect. And it's surprising how, in the most important cases, that actually happens. But we want to make sure we're focusing on user needs first. We also have this digital by default service standard. So any new digital services that are redesigned or are new have to meet a service standard. There's 26 points and they get assessed against them. And if they fail, they can't go live. They can't move through to the next stage, which ultimately means going live. And the very, very first one of those is this one. Understand user needs and research to develop a deep knowledge of who the service users are. So this means when people come in, if they haven't done user research, if they can't talk about their end users in a way that actually convinces us that they've ever met one ever in their entire lives, this service can't progress, which is pretty revolutionary, pretty exciting. It's good for me in my line of work because I lead the user research team. And we have things like this up as well. So you'll see this kind of thing around the place in different departments. This is looking down from GDS onto Holborn. And it's just a bit of paper with a hole torn out and users written on it. And it's funny how it just kind of focuses you and keeps reminding you, it's not about us, it's not about our problems, it's about them down there, just going about their daily life and trying to help them do that better and easier all the time. And it works everywhere except for Ministry of Justice, where if you do this on their windows, you go straight down to the Queen, who I'm sure in her own way is a user, but not the one that we're most focused on. And then if you look at our methodology, we've transformed the way that we do projects now. So this is the old way, where you do start with your requirements and write them all down and go to all of the bajillions of stakeholders who want to put their 2 cents and 300 requirements in, and you end up with a massive document that then goes to procurement, and procurement takes 2.5 years to actually happen, and then you end up with a supplier that you knew you were going to get anyway at a massively inflated price. Then they take it and make it, and then you maybe do a teeny bit of usability testing at the end where you find out that it's all crap, but you haven't got any budget or time to fix it anyway. And then at that point, you inflict it on your users, and they go, why? Why are you doing this to us? That's the old way. This is the new way, where right at the very beginning we engage with users and we understand what the needs are. And then we make an experiment to see whether or not, if we make a thing, we've got any chance at all of meeting the needs. And at that point, if we're not doing well, we can just throw it away and go, well, you know what? It was a nice idea, but it's not working out. Let's move on to something that we can actually fix. But if we do get through here and we get what I think the startup people might call a product market fit, then we go into beta. And that's when we actually start trying to build a thing that we might want to keep. We might still want to throw it away as well, to be fair, but we're aiming to start making a product. And then gradually we build it up until it's kind of equivalent to the live thing, and we run them side by side and let people know you can choose the beta if you like, but there's also this live, the old one here as well, take your pick, until we can see that the beta is at least as good as, hopefully much better than the live one, and then we switch the old one off. So it massively mitigates the risk of redesigning, recreating projects. And it also means that users are involved right from the very beginning and all the way through, and continue to be as we sort of maintain this attitude of continuous improvement the whole way through as well. So discovery, the very first part of the journey, is really all about making sure that we understand what the user needs are. And that sounds really kind of easy and straightforward, but actually when you get into trying to talk about exactly how you do it, it gets kind of quite hairy. And again, as soon as we start going into this phase, we always have to keep going. Remember, it's user needs, not our needs, it's user needs. It's not our use. We need to really make sure that we actually know who these users are, because we're working with people who potentially have worked in this subject area for a long, long time and are really expert in it and really do feel like they know it very well. So having to give them a new lens of seeing their content is a really important thing. I think there's generally kind of 3 steps in understanding what user needs are. And it starts with guessing. It starts with taking everybody's opinion, everybody who thinks that they know what the users need, what needs to be done here, what's important, what we've got to do to make this project right. Let them put it down. Let them put it down. Gather as many good guesses and bad guesses and just people who've got barrows to push get it all down. And because a lot of them are going to be right. Like, hopefully you're working with smart people who do actually know quite a bit. So let them get it all down. At this stage, it's really all about volume. We're not really too worried about whether or not things are right or wrong or important or not important. So that's why step 2 is very important, which is applying data. And this is where we then start to make sure that there's some kind of evidence for the claims that are being made around user needs. So you can't just say something's a user need and it just magically is one. You have to be able to show some kind of evidence that says that, yes, this is a thing. People do actually care about this. And typical types of data that you will get are market research that's been done by an insight team ages ago who didn't probably even know exactly what they were researching, but it could have useful stuff in it. Web analytics is the real kind of the go-to tool for this part of the user need. So if you've got any kind of existing web service or competitive web service or anything like that, you can generally find analytics that will say whether or not people care or don't care about the thing that you think is important. So if lots of people are looking at the content, chances are it's a need. If nobody's looking at it, chances are it's not a need. It might be a need for somebody else to do it, but it's not a need for you to do it because nobody's coming to you looking for the thing. The only kind of exception to that is if you go and look at the search logs and you find that everybody's looking for it, they just can't find it, right? So you'll find evidence for other user needs in the search logs. So it's not all about content that people are using, but that is a massive guide. And then call center data. Usually, if you've got a call center and people are calling up, you can see. Hopefully they are keeping records of why people are calling. It's not always the case. In a lot of cases, we've actually had to give them a tick sheet and go, here's our guess. Can you just put a tick in the box if somebody calls asking something about that? Which is terrible when you think that it's government, but that is what it is. Call centre people are also, I think, at another level than just educated guessing. So talking to the people who take the calls is almost as good as actually talking to the people, because they talk to the people all the time. But they do only talk to people who are most likely to pick up the phone and ask for help. And they only talk to them about the things that people feel are okay to talk about on the telephone as well. So it's not a complete view. It's not the same as actually talking to a person. Which is why we have step 3, talk to the real people. This is the step that people mostly don't want to do. They like to stop at 2 and not go this far. But you can't trust data all by itself. Data will potentially lie to you or accidentally mislead you. It'll do 2 things. It'll make you believe that something's true that's not true, and it will not let you know about something that's actually really important. So this is an example of a page on GovUK about tax codes. So if you're a pay-as-you-earn employee, which is like they take the money out for you automatically every time you get paid, you have a tax code, and that tax code tells your employer how much money to take out of your salary every time you get paid. So different tax codes, different amounts of tax. Things happen in your life that can change your tax code. So making sure that you're on the right tax code is a good thing, because it means that you're not paying too much tax, and it means that you won't get hit by a massive tax bill should somebody suddenly decide that you should have been on a different one. So it's good to be on the right tax code. So as you might imagine, people are interested in trying to understand whether or not they're on the right tax code. So we have pages of guidance in here which tell you about what the tax code is made up of. It's made up of a code that's got numbers and letters in it, and the numbers mean some things and the letters mean some things. And you can imagine somebody coming and looking at this kind of content and spending a lot of time trying to make sense of it and understand what it actually means, and then trying to answer their question with this content. And we've got this helpful little thing down the bottom here, a little bit hidden. But if you did find it and you thought there was something wrong with the page, you could tell us. And we measure this. So pages where people tell us that there's something wrong with the page, that's a bit of data. But if you were a shop worker who wasn't sure whether or not you were getting the right amount of tax taken out, and you came to this page, do you think that you would say there's something wrong with this page because it didn't answer your question? Of course you wouldn't. You don't know if there's something wrong with the page. It's tax stuff. It's complicated. That's why you're here, is because you don't know about it. If that had said something sensible like, did this answer your question, then maybe you would have said, actually, no, sorry, it didn't, in the politest British way possible.
I thought it meant something else.
Yeah, well,
Like,
yeah.
did you, is the page broken?
Exactly, yeah. So this is it's basically asking for errors. It's not asking you whether or not you're satisfied at all. So that's one of the things that we are changing. But currently, as it stands, it's like this. So this page gets hardly any, anybody who does answer it is like an accountant. And then we have this, which you might have seen in the video earlier. This is the Content Explorer, and this is a way that we tell ourselves what content is working well and what's not working well. And it's made up of a matrix of two things. How often people look at it, so more is good, and how long they spend looking at it. And kind of, here, you don't want people to spend ages and ages on it, but there is this kind of zone of a certain amount of engagement that is good as well. But if you think about shop lady or man looking at tax code information, there's lots of them. Like, we know lots of people come here looking for tax information, staring at the page, looking very confused, not telling us there's anything wrong, but generating excellent engagement metrics. So all of our data is telling us that we're doing awesome. But all you need to do is sit down in front of 3 or 4 people who are trying to work out if they're on the right tax code, and you discover very quickly that we're actually doing really crap at this. It's a technical term. So that's one. That's where the data, the type of data that you gather and the way that you analyze it, interpret it, can sometimes it can be really useful, but sometimes it can tell you things that are not really true. The other thing the data doesn't do is it doesn't tell you about stuff that you don't ask it. So we know that, because we go out and talk to people all the time, that if you're doing your taxes, if you're applying for benefits, if you're wanting to reapply for your passport, if you're trying to make a booking to go and see someone in prison, you a lot of the time are feeling pretty stressed, I'm pretty worried. I'm pretty sure that if you make a mistake, the government will in some way penalise you. We have lots of different ways of penalising people. Sometimes it just means you don't get your passport for 3 months or longer. Sometimes it's a fine. But this is the general attitude that people have when they come to interact with government transactions, is kind of, if not just stress, then like straight out fear. And what they want all the time is this. And what we are trying to do is we're trying to get them not to pick up the phone or not to go, into offices, because that is expensive, and doesn't give them a brilliant experience. That we want them to do it online. But getting this online is really difficult because you're isolated, you're by yourself. Often there's nobody with you. There's, you press the button, it goes off into space. And what? And what if we made a mistake? Is it actually going to be working? Has it actually gone where I think it's going to go? I don't know. It's a stressful experience, and people want reassurance, and it's very difficult for us to give it online. And until quite recently, we didn't even know that this was a big deal. But we know that when people are doing their tax form, a lot of the time they just call up the call centre for this. Not with a technical question, not because they think they've done something wrong, but just because they just want somebody to kind of go, no, you're doing great, well done, yeah, no, lots of people do this online all the time, go you. This is not going to come up in web analytics, and it's not going to come up in call centre data, because this isn't on the list of things. Right, this is people, if you look at the kinds of things that they measure in call centres, they don't measure people who just wanted a little bit of kind of encouragement. It's not on the list. So the only way that you find out that this is a thing is by going out and talking to people. And again, it doesn't take very long. It's not very hard to find this out. And once you do, you see it absolutely everywhere all the time, and you think to yourself, this is really important. We're not going to do this whole digital by default thing, which is the whole strategy, unless we address this. But you only learn this by actually going out and talking to people. The data is not going to tell you about it. So this is what we have to say all the time. Step 3 is important. Go out and talk to people. A survey isn't the same thing. Old data from the research department did years ago isn't the same thing. You on the team who are making these decisions, go talk to the people who are going to be using it. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. But government for years has had all of these mechanisms of distance, ways of making itself more and more distant from its end users. It will do lots of big surveys. It will get other companies to do lots of research and then come in and present a PowerPoint presentation to them, but they'll go talk to industry experts and industry groups, but not the actual people. So that's what we are spending a lot of time doing now, is saying, just go talk to the people. Just go talk to the people. No, it's not hard. No, it's not expensive. No, it doesn't take a long time. Just go do it. The excuses you hear are just incredible. So we go out and we do it a lot, and we go into people's homes and we go to workplaces. We spend a lot of time with farmers, going to farmers markets. There's a team out there right now competing with people who are showing their cows. Come, look at our government service, or go show your cow. We go into libraries. So libraries are, and we go to job centres as well, which is a great place to find people who are difficult to get to come to research because they're not very confident about their digital skills or their English language skills, or they're a bit scared of the government. So we go out with chocolate and bribe them to come and sit down with us for a short period of time. Works quite well. We do lots of stuff remotely as well. A lot of our customers are abroad, our users are abroad, and a lot of them are very busy. They're specialists, they're dentists or teachers or people who can't drop everything and come in and do research with us. So we do like a go-to meeting with them. But we do loads of stuff in the lab. We've actually just built our own research lab in like 2 of our meeting rooms have been turned into a nice research lab because it's really important to us that we create loads of opportunities for our teams to see the real people using the thing all the time. So getting these exposure hours is really, really vital. We don't want to be a research team that goes out, does all the fun stuff, come back with PowerPoint and goes, oh, you should have seen the people, oh, they were so great. We want them to actually see the people themselves. That's incredibly important. So we come back, we have all the data, and using the data, we make user stories. And this is the way that we describe our user needs. So you've probably seen this till the cows come home. And you've probably seen loads of this. As a user, I want a green button at the bottom of the page that says this, which is not a thing that a user has ever said. The way that you write your user stories, I think this is a content strategy piece, right? You guys know how to do this stuff. It's often done by like BAs and project managers and people who just think that tax codes is enough of a user story. But, the nuance really, really counts. You can say it this way: I want to understand how to calculate my tax code so I can make sure I'm on the right tax code. Tax department people say stuff like that all the time. A thoughtful, empathetic tax department person might say, I want to make sure I'm on the right tax code so that I can pay the right amount of tax. Because that's what it's about, right? Paying the right amount of tax, not necessarily being on the right tax code. But go out and talk to human beings, and you just find out that actually they don't care about the tax code. They just want to pay the right amount of tax so that they've got the right amount of money to live on day to day. And again, it's nuanced. But if you think about what would you write for that, what would you write for that, and what would you write or maybe make for that, or what would the service be for that? That's a page of content. But that could actually just be a way of actually redesigning a little bit of how tax works, potentially. And that's what we're trying to get to. If we're getting into service design, we're not just trying to make content that's easier to use. So a lot of the time, content isn't the answer at all. A lot of the time, it's changing policy, or changing comms, or changing all kinds of different things. But how you answer the question is really massively influenced by how you frame the user need. If that makes sense. So I think that well understood and clearly stated user needs are the bedrock of all of the important stuff that we do, and getting people actually to think about how do you frame the user need, how do you write it, the words really matter. And I always challenge people to say, if you took this user need and you gave it to your user, would they go, oh yeah, that sounds like me? Because there's other places, like I remember the people in charge of our medical system came in and talked to me about user needs and said, oh, we know our user needs. Our users need transactional services. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. What's a transactional service? The minute somebody says something like that to you, you're like, you don't know what you're talking about, do you? You don't know who your users are. People who know who their users are make user needs that sound like they know who their users are, that sound like a real user would actually talk about. And I hear all the time, well, that's lovely. It's lovely to go out and talk to people, isn't it? That would be great. But we've got a lot of work to do and not much budget, so we need to be pragmatic. So the pragmatic way of approaching this is to do no research. And I'm like, that's stupid. All you're going to do then is make the wrong thing, be very sad, and then have to do this all over again and hopefully do it the right way. The pragmatic way to do it is to find a pragmatic way to do the research. You don't have to do a large-scale ethnography. Get on the phone and talk to 6 people. Getting on the phone and talking to 6 people is so much better than doing nothing. You will know so much more having done that than you will, by having done nothing at all. So be pragmatic about how you do the research. That's not me saying do the least research that you possibly can do. It's not about doing as less as you possibly can. But if you do need to be pragmatic, then be be economical in the way that you approach doing the research, not in whether or not you do it at all, which just shouldn't be an optional thing. So then we go into alpha, beta, live. That's when we start making the things. So we start making prototypes that give us a bit of a clue as to whether or not the thing that we're making is going to meet the need, because we've got a clearly expressed need. We've got a bit of a chance of knowing whether or not that's happening. And this happens all the way through the process. And we get into this, if anybody's seen any of the lean UX-y stuff, this is very familiar. Build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn. We work in Agile, mostly 2 weekly sprints. So we're building stuff, researching, working out what we learn from it, and going back in a 2 weekly cycle, which means we're researching pretty much every 2 weeks. We make HTML prototypes. We don't do Azure or Balsamic or any of that sort of stuff, because we work in multidisciplinary teams where researchers and content people and developers and designers and product owners all sit together and work out what's the thing that we're going to make that we're going to test next time around. And then we go and we do whatever research we're doing, and there's lots of different ways that we might do it, and we come back and we do a proper analysis using post-it notes and affinity sorting, and that tells us the pink is our insight, what do we learn? The orange is what we're going to do about it. What we're going to do about it goes into our backlog, and that's how we work out what we're going to do in the next sprint, and off we go again. And this is all written up on our service design manual if you want to kind of see the boring detail of how we actually do this fortnight after fortnight. You can, if you Google that title, it should come up, hopefully. And we don't just learn about how to do interfaces at work either. We learn interesting things about policy. So a lot of the time we hear little rumours about, or actual things, about things that are coming down the pipeline in terms of policies. And sometimes we think, based on the fact that we see our users really regularly, we think that maybe this could be interesting. So in the identity project, for example, a big challenge for us is that to prove who you are who you say that you are, we need data about you that is evidence. And most of the data that they use at the moment is citizen data, so like passports, driver's license, all of that kind of thing, and credit, like financial data, so things that are happening on your bank account or your credit card or loans or various other things like that. Through you being able to answer questions about those things, you can tell us that you are who you say you are, which is great if you're over 21, got a credit record, got any money, got a bank account, but loads and loads of people don't, and loads of people who interact with government don't. So this is a big challenge for us. But one of the things that loads of us, including that difficult demographic, do is generate bucket loads of social media data. On its own, it's not going to prove that you say that you are, but in combination with other things, it can help us. There's all of these kind of smart algorithmic things that they can do that say it's very likely that this person is a real person who has the credentials to this account, which is linked to this email address, and all of those things together help contribute to identifying who you say that you are. But I don't know how you feel about me saying using social media data to identify yourself to the government. We got a funny feeling in our tummies. So we thought, let's just put it in the prototype and see what people did.
We use Facebook to verify. Why do you use Facebook?
Facebook? Wow.
Ooh, I don't like that.
Talk to me about it.
Is that a joke or is that serious?
Because anybody could put their details on Facebook, and lots of hackers could get your details very easily through Facebook. So
yeah, I wouldn't want to do that really.
why is that?
I don't know, I mean, what they've got more. Anyone could have I could set up a fake Facebook account in your name. So.
Yeah.
And because anyone can set up Facebook accounts, and there's loads of accounts that are set up that are not a real person.
So what would you choose from this page?
I do not want to use Facebook now.
I wouldn't have anything to do with it. I just think, no, just yeah, I'm not happy about that at all. At this stage, I'll probably back out.
Right.
So that's really interesting for me, because traditionally what happens is that decisions get made and then you UX people, you content people make it work. And that's a difficult thing to do. But if we get wind of these things early enough, and ideally if we can encourage them to come and let us prototype policies earlier on, we can't, this the data thing is still a good and important thing. It's still a problem that needs solving. But now we know what we've got to deal with. We don't just get dumped with an incredibly difficult, nuanced problem at the last minute, and then it's like, oh, UX is so hopeless, I can't fix anything. Things that we say all of the time. We say that user experience is the responsibility of the entire team, and that's a pretty compelling example, I think, of why this is true. So we have researchers and we have designers, and when they work together, they do user-centered design with content people as well. And we say that everybody is responsible for UX. So procurement is responsible for UX a lot of the time. Security is responsible for UX. The people who choose what server it's going to go on, the people who have all of these things that we can and can't do because of fraud, all of those people, the people who come up with policies, they're all on the hook for UX. And by not calling us UX, that just keeps resonating that message all of the time. I think it's important. Presumably you guys do as well. Even if it means that there's a whole industry that thinks that we're wrong, who cares? This is really important to us. We can't be left holding the baby and everyone being cross at us because their crazy policy, when you actually implement it, does bad things. We always talk about research being a team sport, so I've kind of mentioned this again. We don't go riding off into the sunsets to talk to users. We bring our teams with us. This means that we have to be pigs and not chickens. This is a kind of an agile thing. You can look that up. I don't have time to explain it to you. It's kind of funny. But it means that we're embedded in the team. We don't have the research team over there who take briefs. We used to do that. It didn't work. In Agile, you've got to be embedded in your team if you actually want them to pay attention to anything that you want to do. We do research in every iteration. And we have this rule that everybody has to watch at least 2 hours of research every 6 weeks. And this is based on this sort of notion of exposure hours, some research that Jared Spool's crew at UIE did about what actually makes teams more likely to be able to make good things. The more that everybody in the team is watching end users, the better. And for us, that goes from our chief exec all the way through. And the strategy is delivery. So the reason that we as researchers got any traction at all in our team was because we helped the teams make better stuff day after day after day. So we didn't do modeling and we didn't do big upfront and we didn't even do personas or anything like that to begin with. We just helped them every sprint make stuff better. And through doing that, then we bought ourselves more credibility and more space to do more interesting work. And we've got a bigger team now than we've ever had before. And we're doing more and more interesting work now than we've ever done before. But it's all because of this. And that's me. Thank you very much for your time.